Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to our distinguished guests, Daud Andre and Gloria Caballero, for taking the time to enlighten us. My name is Yoav Elinevsky. I'm a board member of MAPA and an activist with the Latin America Solidarity Coalition of Western Massachusetts. 14 years ago, almost exactly on March 12, 2007, Comandante Hugo Chavez arrived in Haiti. He was received with great love from the people of Haiti and expressed his love for the people of Haiti. March 12th is celebrated in Venezuela as Flag Day because Francisco de Miranda, the Venezuelan fighter for the liberation of Venezuela, created and raised for the first time a new flag of Grand Colombia in Haiti in 1806 on his way to Venezuela. And this is why Chavez picked that day to be in Haiti. When Chavez came to Haiti, he said that PetroCaribe, a program to supply Haiti with oil and other aid from Venezuela, was given, quote, to repay the historic debt that Venezuela owes the Haitian people. He added, quote, we are very conscious of where we are. We are conscious of what the Haitian people, a people who were able to defeat empires and free their country well before the rest of Latin America and the Caribbean, a heroic people and also ravaged people over the past 2 centuries. Reading the fantastic book, The Black Jacobians by C.L.R. I was struck by any historical fact about Haiti. One is the unbelievable brutality of the European slave merchants and the French slave owners in Haiti. Another is the fact that Haiti, then called San Domingo, was the most profitable colony in the world at the time of the French Revolution, and that the wealth accumulated by the French maritime bourgeoisie from the slave trade and the slave in Santo Domingo was the economic basis for the French Revolution. In his book, James quotes the French historian and socialist leader Jaurès, who said, sad irony of human history that the fortune created at Bordeaux and Nantes by the slave trade gave the bourgeoisie that pride which needed liberty and contributed to human emancipation. In this sense, all of us, supporters and activists of liberty, equality, and fraternity, have an historical debt to pay to the heroic people of Haiti who have been suffering for so long from colonialism and imperialism for their heroism. So tonight, we are fortunate to have with us Daud Andre. He is an organizer with the Brooklyn, New York-based Committee to Mobilize Against Dictatorship in Haiti, and he will help us understand better what is going on in Haiti now and what can we do about it. We are also fortunate to have with us my good friend, Dr. Gloria Caballero, a Cuban-American scholar and activist who lives in Holyoke, Massachusetts, who will be the moderator of our program. And now I give you the floor, Gloria. Thank you.
Thank you, Joaf. Good evening, everyone. For centuries now, the United States has employed force to dominate Haiti, the first Black republic that was established in 1804 after the defeat of French and Spanish colonizers. President Biden has an opportunity to demonstrate his commitment to democracy and Black self-determination by ending support for the Moïse regime and denouncing violence. For over a month, the rogue Moïse government has launched a brutal crackdown on all dissent, resulting in home invasions, arrests, the firing of Supreme Court judges and a police inspector general, attacks on the media and the use of chemical agents and live ammunition to disperse protests. Incomprehensibly, at the same time, the Biden administration has deported hundreds of Haitians, including children, back to Haiti. Good evening, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm Gloria Caballero. I'm a Cuban American and of Haitian ancestry, so this topic is very close to my heart. I want to thank Mr. Daoud for accepting our invitation. I am a member of the Latin American Solidarity Coalition of Western Massachusetts, and we would like to begin our session, our event, by thanking the sponsors of the event, the Latin American Working Group of the Massachusetts Peace Action and the Latin American Solidarity Coalition of Western Massachusetts. Please, Mr. Daoud, tell us about how to better understand the nature of the ongoing situation in Haiti as it relates to a colonial and an imperialist legacy in the area.
We're not hearing you.
I do not hear Daoud. Can you hear him?
No?
Daoud, we cannot hear you. Now we can hear you. No. We cannot hear you, Daoud.
You should speak over Zoom, not over Skype.
Okay, so it says I'm unmuted now. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Daoud Andre. As I was presented, I'm a Haitian activist living in New York. I'm a member of an organization called COMOCODA, Committee to Mobilize Against Dictatorship.
It's my mistake. I muted him. My mistake.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, yes, a member of COMOCODA, the Committee to Mobilize Against Dictatorship in Haiti. I'm also the host of a radio program in the Haitian community. It's called Héritier Papa Dessalines. This is the heirs, the children of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the founder of our nation, our country, Haiti. I want to thank the Massachusetts Peace Action, thank Yoav that we've communicated, and Gloria, and everyone else involved in this organization for the invitation to speak to you guys today. I want to say a little bit about the history of Haiti. Yoav, in his introduction, spoke about Miranda's creation of the Grand Colombia flag in Haiti, particularly in Jacmel, and that President Hugo Chavez indeed visited Haiti on this day. Now, why was Francisco Miranda able to be in Haiti and to have the opportunity to create this flag, which was to be the flag of a liberated South America in Haiti? This is because at the time we are speaking about 1806, and this was not Miranda's first trip to Haiti. He had been there and had met with Emperor Jean-Jacques Dessalines in 1805. And it's in another trip that this flag was created, because at the time, this was the only country in South America, Central America, the Caribbean, that was not under the thumb of slave masters. of the colonialists. And yes, the United States was an independent country in 1806, but the fact is that the United States of America was a slaveholding country at that time. So he came to Haiti to get support for the fight to liberate South America. And as Haiti had been freed 2 years prior to that, January 1st, 1804, Haiti declared independence, the second country to do so in the Americas. Well, Haiti became a haven for those seeking freedom, for those fleeing oppression, fleeing slavery. And in the Constitution of our country, it is a 1805 Constitution, it is clearly stated that any Black or indigenous person who steps foot on this land, you are no longer a slave. You are free, and the nation of Haiti would fight to the last person for your freedom. So Haiti gave Miranda and Bolivar money, guns, ships, soldiers, and goods as well, coffee at the time, as well as other goods that the country was producing to help them in their quest to free South America from Europe, Spain at the time. And the one thing that Haiti asked in return was that whatever territory would be liberated, slavery would be abolished in this territory. And Simon Bolivar did that. And anyway, everything else is history, as they say. Now, how did Haiti become free? So this was a colony of Spain. The French, they say buccaneers, started to occupy, like pirates, a part, northwest part of the island, occupied it. Eventually, they became stronger and they fought. They got support from their government in France. And through the treaty, what's called the Treaty of Ryswick, 1697, well, a formal separation began on this island, whereas Spain had occupied the entire island from the time Columbus landed, 1492, to 1697. Well, it was divided into 2/3. What's now Dominican Republic belonged to Spain, and the 1/3 where Haiti is now, it was a colony of France. We understand that this was one of the most brutal spaces for the Africans who were brought there as in chains to work the land, to produce sugar, to produce coffee, indigo for France. And France, this was such a lucrative colony for France, producing more wealth than the entire 13 colonies which became the United States. French called this 1/3, Saint-Domingue, that was the name France called it, the Pearl of the Antilles, which, of course, you understand, this meant, like, the jewel, what was producing more than anyone else, any other place. Of course, this pearl of the Antilles for France, for the slave owners, the colonists, was hell on earth for the Africans. And our ancestors fought just as Africans fought wherever they were colonized, and eventually, militarily, our ancestors ended up defeating France, defeating the Spaniards, defeating the English, and again, defeating the French to conquer this territory and to make it a free land for their children. And for every, as I said before, every other Black person or indigenous person, people fleeing slavery, fleeing oppression from wherever. Now, once Haiti becomes a free country, free Black country in 1804, you can imagine that this is a problem for the European countries and the United States, who all had Africans in chains working as slaves. So Haiti became a pariah state. All of these countries did everything in their power to collude and to sabotage this free country, because of course they could not allow this to be an example to Africans who were in chains in their own countries. And none of these countries, not England, who had occupied Jamaica next door to Haiti, not Spain, who had occupied Cuba also next door, and what is now Dominican Republic, and certainly not the United States. So our liberator, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, was assassinated by collusion of the enemies of Haiti, of freedom from without and within the country on October 17, 1806. And the country fell into the hands of another kind of Haitians, let's put it like that. People who did not see freedom or death, as Jean-Jacques Dessalines had preached. And his philosophy was that nothing is more precious than freedom and self-determination. But the people who came after him, they were more into some kind of compromise to occupy, I don't know if we can take a pause for a second,
Yes.
because I have a low battery. So if we can take a pause, I will plug in.
Mm-hmm. But at this time, we would like to thank everybody who keeps joining our event. This is an event sponsored by the Latin America Working Group of the Massachusetts Peace Action and by the Latin American Solidarity Coalition of Western Massachusetts. Joining us today is Daul Andre, and he is an organizer with the Brooklyn, New York-based community to mobilize against dictatorship. The reason we're having this event is because for over a month, the rogue Moïse government has launched a brutal crackdown on all dissent resulting in home invasions, arrests, the firing of Supreme Court judges and a police inspector general, attacks on the media, and the use of chemical agents and live ammunition to disperse protests. Incomprehensibly, at the same time, the Biden administration has deported hundreds of Haitians, including children, back to Haiti. Again, this is an event that is sponsored by the Massachusetts Solidarity Coalition and by the Latin American Solidarity Coalition of Western Massachusetts. Back with us is Daoud Andre, who's going to, so far we've been talking about how the current situation in Haiti is intersected by the colonial and imperial legacy.
From the computer. Yes. I don't want to stay too much on this period of our history, but the fact is, this is what defines the relationship of Haiti to the world. Mm-hmm. The fact that our ancestors had fought and they had militarily defeated the French, the Spaniards, and the English. And what does this do when this happens, this military defeat? Well, it dispels the myth of white superiority. This fiction that the Europeans had created to say that they had enslaved us, Black people, and the indigenous because they were a superior intellect, and that they were superior organizers, that they were superior in terms of military action as well. Very important. So now what does Europe do? Well, they go to another strategy to make sure that Haiti does not develop into a prosperous country. And this is an embargo that is, we can say, the longest embargo in the history of this world that we're living in right now. Because, as a matter of fact, it seems like it's not still going on, but it's still going on. The countries of Europe, like France, does not recognize Haiti's independence until 1825, and this is practically at gunpoint, and where they demanded 150 million francs for the in today's money, we're talking about $27 billion that the country of Haiti had to pay to France so that Haiti could join the community of nations. That's how they call it. And of course, all of Europe colluded, and this is the neighbors that Haiti had at the time. And of course, Haiti does not have this money to pay to France. And I should say as well that our ancestors who fought and won our independence, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, would have never agreed to this. But as I said, Jean-Jacques Dessalines was assassinated, and a new breed of leadership came to power in Haiti. So 1825, France recognizes, and little by little other countries, European countries, and the United States during the Civil War, I think it's 1861, recognizes the independence of Haiti. So, but the sabotage does not end. because still Europe cannot have the example of a country of Black people who freed themselves and who, by their own means, have created a prosperous country for their children and their allies. So what happens? I should say the world we're living in today, right now, in 2021, is not very different from the world of 1804, 1806, the period we're talking about, 1825, 1861, because Black people all over the world are subject to the whims of Europe and the United States, and we can say now Canada, and some other countries as well, we can say. But who carries a veto power at the United Nations? It's not very different from the people who had controlled the slave trade, who had decided that certain people were inferior and others were superior. And the reality in the United States itself today, where we are for this meeting, is not much different. If it were, we would not have, George Floyd's, Patrick Dorismond's, Amadou Diallo's, and Breonna Taylor's, and so many Black people who are victim to racism, who are victim to the same kind of discrimination that, in another form certainly, but the same kind of discrimination. The United States itself, when what they call the First World War, decides that because of they are now in a military position to apply their Monroe Doctrine. Imagine that they can by themselves make a rule and impose it on the rest of the world. They are now in a position where they can assert themselves. Occupations, invasions all over Latin America, in the Caribbean, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. And the United States ends up occupying Haiti from 1915 to 1934, where they take over, dismantle the remnants of Haiti's army, what remained from the Army of Independence, and they create a police force that they called Gendarmerie d'Haïti, became Garde d'Haïti, and later became the Armed Forces of Haiti. But when they created during the occupation, it's for one reason. It's to fight against the Haitians who were fighting the US occupation. And although the United States military leaves the Marines, leave Haiti in 1934, they maintain control of economic control of Haiti, a kind of economic control that till today, 2021, that we are speaking of, has not budged. It hasn't changed. And a lot of people speak about the Duvalier dictatorship as if the Tonton Macoutes, as if this is some, wild Africans who voodoo, and people who are, let's say, wild Africans. What more can I say? But in fact, the brutality of the Duvalier 29-year dictatorship in Haiti, 14 years for the father, François Duvalier, and 15 years for the son, Jean-Claude Duvalier. This is the product of U.S. imperialism. This is the product of U.S. keeping Haiti and Haiti's resources, we have to say, safe for the United States. Now, this is a period when François Duvalier comes to power in 1957, that you have liberation movements all over South America, Latin America, and Cuba. The 26th of July movement is fighting to end Batista's rule in Cuba. And of course, the United States, Cuba is a stone's throw from Haiti. So the United States needs a kind of brutal, strong, individual leader, how you want to put it, to keep Haiti in check, to ensure that they don't have to deal with a liberated Haiti, a Haiti that is turning towards communism, socialism. And so the United States for 29 years props up the Duvalier regime. And to the point that when François Duvalier dies in April of 1971, and they felt this was a threat, might appear to be an opportunity for Haitian freedom fighters to invade, to try to take over the government. What does the United States government do? They send warships to encircle Haiti, especially points between Cuba and Haiti, to ensure that a safe transition of power from François Duvalier to his son, Jean-Claude Duvalier. So the weapons that allowed Duvalier to stay in power, of course, they came from the United States. Money came from the United States. So it was a kind of a hypocritical stance in the media, where the US government is criticizing the brutality that's going on in Haiti, and on the other side, they are supporting in every way the dictatorship of the Duvaliers. So, of course, when the time comes and the people had mobilized to the point where Duvalier could no longer stay in power, it was the United States that sent a plane to take Jean-Claude Duvalier out of the country and to bring him to France. So there is no dictatorship, Duvalier dictatorship, no Tonton Macoutes exists without the United States propping up this dictatorship. Just like today, and this is the point we think that's important to make. It's all well and good to speak about the dictatorial tendencies of Michel Martelly, who was there before Jovenel Moïse, but the fact remains they would not last one day without the weapons, without the money, without the support of the United States. We want this to be absolutely clear. This, the kidnappings, the violence, the rapes, the gangs that are rampant in the country right now, it does not exist without the United States support for these people. Now, we want to explain that in 1991, there was 1990, there was an election in Haiti, and the people of Haiti, inside and outside the country, had found a leader, someone that we all believed would take Haiti out of the shithole reality that it was placed in by the enemies of freedom, the people that Haiti had snatched slavery from. And President Aristide came to power. But 7 months later, the United States colluded with the army that was in place at the time, with the bourgeoisie, to have a coup d'etat to take him out of power. Why? Simply because this was not someone that they had put in. This was not someone that was under their control. This is the reality. And of course, not just for Haiti, for the rest of the world as well. Look at any country where you have a brutal leader that is selling off the resources of the country to multinationals. You will find that this person can stay in power forever long they want. They can change constitutions like you change a shirt. The United States, Europe, France, they will say nothing. Now, find someone like Evo Morales, like Hugo Chavez, like, Fidel. Of course, the United States is going to do everything in their power to take this government down, to what they say, make it safe for democracy. But of course, what does democracy mean? It only means a government that wants what the United States and the Europeans want, that will give them as much of that country's resources as they want. And of course, we know they want everything. It doesn't matter that, 90% of the population is living in slums, is drinking polluted water. It doesn't matter. What matters is this government working for the multinationals? Is it giving like contracts like Martelly, who was, we have to say, put in the year of the earthquake, they forced, the United States forced an election onto the country, and Martelly was nowhere near the top candidates, but the United States, the Clinton family, they wanted him because this was their person. This was the person that would give them what they wanted. And an example of what he gave them, of course, is this mining contract to Anthony Rodham, Hillary Clinton's brother, a company that he was a part of, VCS Mining, where it stipulated that of whatever $100 worth of gold that, because they did some study after the earthquake, that they said there was about $20 billion worth of gold in the northeast of Haiti. And Martelly gave this company the contract where whatever $100 worth of gold that they said they found, it could be $1 million, but they say it's $100 worth of gold they find in the ground in Haiti, $97.50 would go to them, and $2.50 would go to Haiti. So this is what the fight is in essence. So Martelly, when it was time to leave, he handpicked this current clown who's there, Jovenel Moïse, and does the same thing. He was also put in by the Democrats because this election happened in November of 2016, while Barack Obama was still in power and Joe Biden was the vice president. So same thing. During the time that he was there with Donald Trump, he was such a lackey to Donald Trump that many people, many Haitians, made the false deduction that he was Donald Trump's lackey. But of course, once, and many Haitians believe that once Joe Biden would come to power, had come to power, Joe Biden would act to force him out. But of course, the Biden administration, as we have seen this last month, they have in every way supported Jovenel Moïse, because all over the world, this is the kind of leadership that the United States wants in every country. Leaders that are lackeys, that will do whatever the United States and its allies want, that will sell off the resources of the country. It doesn't matter how much corruption there is. It doesn't matter how much brutality there is, so long as this individual is subservient to them, then everything goes. So this is the reality that we are in right now. In 2021, the people of Haiti, who have never stopped fighting from, from the African continent through the kidnapping, on the slave ships, upon arrival, and throughout the history of our peoples, not just in Haiti, but all over the Americas, on this land, well, our people have fought, and our people continue to fight. So the enemy in Haiti right now is not necessarily Jovenel Moïse. He's the face of it. He's the puppet that plays the role of leadership as if he's in control. But Jovenel Moïse is in control of nothing. The puppeteer is the United States, what is called the core group. This is a group of countries, France, Canada, Germany, Spain is a part of it, also the UN, the OAS, who call themselves the Friends of Haiti. They formed this racket, they call themselves the Friends of Haiti, but what they are is basically a support group for US policy, European colonial policy in Haiti. And they are the enemy. And this is why we are part of the coalition that is asking all over the world protests against dictatorship in Haiti in solidarity with the Haitian people on Monday, the 29th of March, everywhere around the world. So I'm going to stop here and I'll take questions, comments. I'll listen to comments. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, thank you, Daoud, for this background. I think it's a very important historical background. It's important that we know that what is happening today in Haiti is nothing new, that it comes from a long legacy of colonialism, of racism, imperialism, and that we should still keep an eye on our history and the history of the Caribbean and the history of colonization in the entire Americas. So some people are talking about what powers that the United States have to change the Haitian constitution, and also the role of the CIA in the campaign of disinformation about what is going on in Haiti. Could you please respond to that?
Well, as I said, from the 1915 occupation to today, the United States has never really relinquished control of Haiti. And sometimes it's more obvious than other times. whenever there is a government in Haiti that is not amenable to the United States, there's a coup d'etat. And of course, the arm of the US government that manipulates, that creates disinformation, that feeds, how can I say, resources to what's called opposition, when there is a serious government trying to do something for the people, there is the CIA, as it is everywhere else. But they don't only use the CIA. The CIA works in coordination with USAID, supposedly promoting international development, with NDI, with IRI, International Republican Institute, like trying to support. That's what they're saying. They're supporting democracy. They're supporting human rights. But of course, the United States wouldn't recognize democracy or human rights if it slapped them in the face, you know? So this is what the world is dealing with, not just Haiti.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are people from San Diego who would like to know, any way to contact you, or if there's a list of phone numbers, or is there a website where they could just organize and support the struggle that you're moving forward in defense of Haiti. Could you tell us, please?
Yes, there are 3 numbers that are public for COMOCODA, Committee to Mobilize Against Dictatorship in Haiti, 347-730-3620.
So that's let me type it. 347, right?
347-730.
730.
3620.
3620.
718.
718.
440.
Oh, 440.
6892.
6892.
And a 917.
That's another number?
Yes, 3 phone numbers that are public.
Okay.
917.
Okay, 917. Yep.
345.
345.
2817.
2817. So I guess I entered all the numbers together.
Thank you. And email, well, they can Google COMOCODA, KOMOKODA, the Committee to Mobilize Against Dictatorship in Haiti.
COMOCODA, like that.
That's the Committee to Mobilize Against Dictatorship in Haiti.
COMOCODA. Okay. Good. So people are talking about if the United States, what is it that the United States gets out of Haiti? What are the resources today? And the UN has occupied Haiti multiple times. That's a comment, if you could react to that. And the UN still is the United States involved still, and has it changed in Haiti? What's the involvement of the US in Haiti? Has anything changed? What are the resources that the United States has? That Haiti has that could be profitable to the United States?
Well, the biggest resource is, of course, the history of Haiti, the example that Haiti represents. But of course, you wouldn't imagine it, but because practically the last name of our country, Haiti, is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. But if you go to Haiti, you'd be surprised to find white Americans, Canadians, all kinds of Europeans all over the country, working, making money, mining the resources of the country in agriculture. Mangoes, for example, one of the, I don't know, in Boston, or when mango season is on, like how much you guys pay for mangoes, the Haitian mangoes, of course, over there. Here in New York City, they're like $3-4 for each mango. And you can imagine that the American companies, they will pay a Haitian peasant something like $50 for a tree full of mangoes, thousands of mangoes, a lot of resources. But since Ronald Reagan and his policy, Caribbean Basin Initiative, and which said that the U.S. multinationals, they have to travel too far to go to China, to go to Asia, India for cheap labor. So it was decided that Haiti would be the source of cheap labor for U.S. Canadian multinationals. And baseballs for so long were made in Haitian factories, and Hanes, so many of these companies, J.C. Penney, Walmart, so many of their clothes are sewn in Haiti. Certainly not the raw materials, but they're brought there, and because the U.S. They have something they call hope, like supposedly because Haiti is in such a dire condition, so they lower tariffs for goods coming from Haiti. So because it's their game, so stuff that is not made in Haiti comes through Haiti to get to the United States at these kinds of rates. And the Clintons, the UN, the Americans, they revived this Ronald Reagan Caribbean Basin Initiative through something called, I don't know if you guys know anything about Paul Collier, Collier. This is a European economist who, again, felt that the problem with Haiti is that the Haitian peasants, they are making their own food. They are producing their own food. So for them, it's a waste of time for the Haitian peasant to feed him herself. So they want to turn all of Haiti into what they call free trade zones, where Europeans, Americans, Canadian companies, they go set up shop, build factories over there. And of course, they pay no taxes to the Haitian government. But and then they, of course, kindness of their heart, they will bring food. So Haitians will work for low, we call it slave wages, like $3 a day in the factories. And then we will not be producing our own food. And we will buy it from them. So this is what they wish for. But of course, in the first constitution of our country in 1805, this was clearly pointed out by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, where he says that agriculture, this is it was the only profession that was subsidized by the government, because that was the most necessary. Because if you don't feed yourself, then you cannot be independent. You understand? And forever, the Haitian people have always grown their own food, have always invested into, not the governments, but the people of Haiti, have always invested into agriculture, because we understand that so long as we are producing our own food, we will never be anyone's slave.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's clear.
On the UN, what I want to say, yeah, many times after the 1994, when after the first coup against President Aristide, he was returned to, that was in September of 1991. He was returned to power in October of 1994. There was a UN mission. Again, they changed the name so many times. And after the second coup in February of 2004, the US occupied, and then they brought in a UN mission. It's called MINUSTAH. And the reason that the United States brings in these UN missions is because it's cheaper to have soldiers from Brazil, from Sri Lanka, from Nepal, doing this job for them rather than to have US Marines. The lives of Marines are too precious. That's one. They don't want to lose any. They want to kill everyone around the world, but they don't want to lose one Marine. But of course, as well, you know, there's what a Marine gets paid is like maybe 100 times what a soldier from Sri Lanka gets paid. So they are proxies for the United States. But the fact is, and these are occupation forces, and we know that some people are still debating whether it was intentional or it was an accident that the UN soldiers from Nepal, they brought cholera to Haiti, which killed thousands, tens of thousands of Haitians. How much we will never know. And of course, they have absolute immunity for everything they do in our countries, not just in Haiti. So the UN is a proxy for, the UN is not an independent body that has a will that can decide to go right or to go left. And certainly in this area, in the case of Haiti, it's whatever the United States wants that happens there. And the OAS, what did Fidel Castro say, Gloria? He said this is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the United States.
No? No?
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening.
Oh, are you asking me or you were,
no, I'm just making a
comment? Yeah.
A comment.
And then
So
you're
the
right.
OAS, what I'm saying is the OAS is not, you know, there's nothing serious that happens there. And I was very proud of Cuba when they offered for Cuba to become a member of the OAS again, and Raúl Castro says thank you, but no thank you.
There was someone who said, well, Joe Biden apparently said that if Haiti, you know, it wouldn't make any difference, you know, even if Haiti sank into the Caribbean. What do you make of that? What's your reaction to that? And after that, I would like to open it, to open this the conversation so that people have the time to participate, please. I want to hear.
This is a video that is on the internet, so anyone can see it. Joe Biden was in an interview with Charlie Rose, Channel 13, and they were asking. He was explaining that. Because they were like, you know, why are you all the time talking about Bosnia? This is during the first coup against Aristide, and Aristide was in Washington. There were protests all over for Aristide to return. But he never bothered with Haiti. Haiti meant nothing to him. And he said, yeah, there's journalists who came to speak to him. And they're like, well, is it racism that Biden never says anything about Haiti? He's just talking about Bosnia. And then Joe Biden says in this interview that, well, Bosnia has real military weapons, you know, but Haiti, you know, what is Haiti? It's like if the Caribbean Sea would open up and Haiti would sink to the bottom, or if it would explode 300 feet up in the air, this would mean nothing to the interests of the United States, you know? So that's the comment.
Well, that's unfortunate. You see that we still have this patriarchal, racist, imperialist, and colonialist relationship with the other. We create the other, and it's a matter of power relations and who has the wording and the platform to just say things like that. Please, questions from the public. I know.
Yeah, one thing I want to say before we go, and during the last election, this was a position that we took, you know. Everyone was speaking about how racist Donald Trump was, and the whole comment about Haiti and Latin American, African countries being shitholes. But one thing we said is, if you look at the history of Joe Biden, what you'll find is that Joe Biden is no less racist than Donald Trump, or Bill Clinton any less racist than Donald Trump, or even Barack Obama, the brother, any less racist in the way they treat the rest of the world. The fact is, what Trump does, Trump is a vulgar individual, you know, and he will say out loud what all of them, they are thinking and they are acting on, you know, the same way. So we said that, yeah, Barack Obama treated Haiti like a shithole. Bill Clinton, George Bush, all of them, they treat, and not just Haiti, of course, all of what's called the third world. This is a dump where they go, they take what they want, they kill whoever they want, and then they walk out and nothing happens to them. But Donald Trump is the one who will say something like this. So we said we're not going to go for that, you know? We understand what racism is. We understand that all of the ill that Haiti has suffered from the United States in the past 45, 47, 48 years, Joe Biden has been a part of the US government and a part of it. So, you know, we said people should understand that US policy would not change whether it is Donald Trump or Joe Biden that is in office. And this is why the deportations continue. And I saw a report from the Quixote Center that showed that during the month of February alone, from February 1st to the 26th, Joe Biden deported more people to Haiti in that 1 month than Donald Trump had deported during the entire 2020 fiscal year.
Yes.
Gloria, I want to say something here.
Questions? Yes.
I want to share with the audience our plan for March 29.
Yes.
As our friend Daoud mentioned, we are planning to have a standout on solidarity with the people of Haiti outside the Haitian consulate in Boston in Washington Street. The time will be announced later, but people who are interested to join us, please send us a message on chat and we will be in touch with you. I also want to inform you that we are going to start a book group to read and discuss the book, The Black Jacobians, Toussaint Louverture and the San Domingo Revolution by C.L.R. James. If you are interested to join this book group, please let us know on the chat and we will be in touch with you. Thank you.
So, Jeff, you said Washington Street, Boston, March 25th, and we still need the time for that.
March 29th. I will send an email to everybody follow up to the webinar with this information, but please keep it in your mind and please join us.
Join the Massachusetts Peace Action and the Latin American Coalition and Solidarity Coalition of Western Massachusetts, please. These are actions and platforms that we'd like to share to support the struggle for freedom, for solidarity, for inclusion, for peace and self-determination of all human beings. As we continue, our program, our event with our dear friend, Dao Andre, and we're talking about why is it that the United States is supporting the continuation of Luis Moise in the presidency in Haiti. How come that this is still a legacy of colonialism, imperialism, racism, patriarchy, and occupation, and the results on human beings, because we are all human beings. So please, questions from the audience. There are so many people that are kindly sharing websites, and we've already shared the phone number. Please, Andre, could you please repeat the name of the organization that people would like to support?
Our organization is Komokoda. It's K-O-M-O-K-O-D-A. That's the Committee to Mobilize Against Dictatorship in Haiti. And we gave a couple of phone numbers that I think they're posted in the chat. We are part of the coalition that has made the call for solidarity protests all over the world on March 29th against dictatorship in solidarity with Haiti. We chose March 29th, we want to explain, because this will mark 34 years since the current constitution of Haiti, the constitution that came, that the people voted after the Duvalier dictatorship. Now, Duvalier's constitution had a president for life. And I want to repeat, the United States supported the Duvalier government. And right now, Jovenel Moïse is trying to create another constitution. He has announced that, he had announced that on April 25th, he would have had a referendum for his constitution. And this is for the first time he's trying to allow a consecutive presidency, meaning that he can run again for election as president of Haiti. And this was something that was removed from the constitution because of the Duvalier dictatorship. And his masters, he was on a call with the Security Council of the United Nations in 2 weeks ago, I think, and they didn't mind this at all. The only thing they said, April is a bit too early. And immediately, Jovenel Moïse pushed it to June. But the fact is, Jovenel Moïse is a puppet. And I discussed this with some family, that is why we encourage folks to have protests that day in front of State Department offices, institutions that have some relationship to the United States, to the United Nations, or to the OAS, or if your country, like I know family in Canada, that the Canadian government is supporting Jovenel Moïse in Haiti, they are protesting in front of a Canadian Foreign Office buildings on the 29th. So we encourage people in whatever city that you're in the United States. We're hoping to have at least 200 cities around the world standing in solidarity with Haiti on that day. We're actually working on a website, on pages that will explain, allow people to participate in the campaign, that will have flyers, common literature, and slogans that we are encouraging. But we want to make it clear, the enemy is really the United States and the European powers that have not changed their policy of isolation, their policy of hate, of revenge against the Haitian nation for having dared to fight to stand up against slavery.
So people want to know about the legacy of Jean-Bertrand Aristide. Is it true that he is hated, or on the contrary, he's gained support among the Haitian people?
Well, the people of Haiti elected Jean-Bertrand Aristide twice. And both times, the United States organized a coup d'etat against Jean-Bertrand Aristide. The first time, as I said, they worked with the army, the oligarchy. The second time, because in 1995, when he returned in 94, in 95 he dismantled the army. So the army was no longer there to make a coup d'etat with the U.S. Embassy in Haiti. So the second time in 2004, when they had spent so much money to foment dissent, to create conditions to force him out, and none of it worked. It was U.S. Special Forces that came to Haiti and took him out, basically kidnapped him, took him out, put him and his wife on a plane. They had no idea where they were going, and they ended up they were deposed, they were dropped off in Central African Republic. This is the reality. So I don't think the United States would do this against someone that the people hate. The people in Haiti, I would say, love President Aristide. Today, he was taken out in 2004. He was spent many years in South Africa as a guest of President Thabo Mbeki and then President Zuma. He returned to Haiti in 2011. And I dare to say that today he remains the most popular politician in the country. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but it's a fact. And this is the people in the streets, in the poor neighborhoods. They love President Aristide. And that's the reason that Jovenel Moïse, with the support of the United States, organizes street gangs to kill the people in the poor neighborhoods, in the slums, and massacres are done there. And why? Because when there are protests against the government, these people form the bulk of the protest. And so definitely and I have to say he has a foundation that works with poor people in the country. He has a university that is graduating doctors, lawyers, and other professionals to help the country in solidarity with Cuba. And of course, the United States does not want that, does not appreciate that. So they spread their rumors. But I think if you have an election, a free and fair election in Haiti today, and anyone is allowed to participate, President Aristide would win this election, as we say in Haiti, before 10 o'clock.
There are some comments here that talk about people really not loving Aristide because of corruption. How do you respond to that?
Well, corruption. This is such a funny word because they have something called Transparency International that speaks about corruption around the world, and I'm looking at this $1.9 trillion that what's his name, Joe Biden just signed today. And I mean, I'm wondering, you know, you'd have to have like the budget of Haiti like 20 times inside of that to get, you know, this kind of corruption that they speak about in other countries. But the thing is, all of this is never done with any proof. Let me give you an example of what they say, that President Aristide left the country with $300 million, something like this, because, you know, people can say whatever they want. But how did President Aristide get out of the country in 2004? U.S. Special Forces came at gunpoint. They put him and his wife in a helicopter and they took them away. I mean, in a car, took them to the airport. So, I mean, the U.S. Special Forces would have had to carry this money, you know? And they did so much investigations. They've never found any bank accounts. I think like it might have been almost a year or maybe less than a year after President Aristide was taken out of the country. His house was looted, everything was taken out. And then it's like the place was left wide open for so long, and then someone went in there. They found they with a camera and they took pictures of, you know, a few paper money, but like, I mean, in all, I don't think like in U.S. funds this would be like $2,000 or like you know, something like this. And they're saying that this is money that Aristide had stashed, you know, like they didn't even have the decency to find like $1 million or $10 million and put there, you know, like just some change, you know. But this is a house that was ransacked, everything was stolen, and like even furniture, everything, and the gates had been wide open. And then you come and you say, oh, look, this is what I found at Aristide's house. So I think if Aristide had stolen millions of dollars, like they are saying, it would be front page on the New York Times, on the Washington Post, yes, and in the Miami Herald that has a Clinton lackey, a U.S. spy, Jacqueline Charles, working as a legitimate reporter. And thank you, I should say, I cannot say this without thanking Julian Assange for publishing the WikiLeaks emails that shows communication between Jacqueline Charles and the US government. Thank you.
And Democracy Now! Also, who covered the news when Aristide was kidnapped, and recently went over the news in Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, and they were also reviewing the history of those years of kidnapping, the Clinton involvement, and the CIA misinformation and propaganda, etc. So, more questions from the public? Any questions and comments? Again, this is, I just want to say it right, Daou André, an organizer with the Brooklyn, New York-based committee to mobilize against dictatorship in Haiti. This is an event that's being sponsored by the Latin American Working Group of the Massachusetts Peace Action and the Latin American Solidarity Coalition of Western Massachusetts. Please join us. More questions? Anyone from the public would like to share any comments? Let me see. Democracy Now! Covered how Clinton Foundation built funds from Haiti, rebuilt effort, and her brother is overseeing extraction of gold. So basically, we're talking about extractivism, imperialism, expansion, and Haiti still en la lucha, as we say in Spanish, right? In the struggle, trying to, yes. trying to make sure that they're treated as human beings, to acknowledge their humanities, and please let them build their own project with their own fantasies and their own expectations of life. Because at the end of the day, in 1804, it was Haiti, a country of people that were enslaved by the Spanish and by the French and by so many people who just wanted to make them shadows and sell and cripple their bodies and squeeze their strength into producing wealth for other people. Thank you so much. More questions or comments?
Yeah, I want to say something about the earthquake. We didn't mention the earthquake at all today, but on January 12, 2010, a massive earthquake hit Haiti. And when this earthquake happened, I mean, the government of Haiti had published later that 350,000 Haitians had died, and buildings, tens of thousands of buildings had come down. The National Palace had come down as well. And of course, as soon as it happened, the United States took over the country. Basically, they took over the airport, and they were the ones deciding who gets in and who doesn't get in. And Haiti was asking for help from people all over the world. And of course, since the United States had control of the airport, and Bill Clinton had been there, not living there, but a UN envoy at the time, supposedly to raise Haiti's profile and to help Haiti. And when this earthquake happened, there is again, thank you WikiLeaks for this email, where U.S. ambassador, I think it was Kenneth Merton at the time, who sent a message saying the gold rush is on, and of course it was a gold rush. Because Komokoda, every anniversary of the earthquake, we protest in front of the Clinton Foundation in Manhattan. And why do we do that is because they were the primary beneficiary of the earthquake in Haiti, not the Haitian people. You see, a lot of well-meaning people around the world sent aid, governments around the world. And at the United Nations in March of 2010, a body that was called the Haiti Reconstruction Commission was created. And the president of Haiti at the time, René Préval, and the countries of CARICOM wanted P.J. Patterson, who was a prime minister of Jamaica, to head the Reconstruction Commission. But Hillary Clinton used her power to stop this. And who did she install as head of that commission? Bill Clinton, her husband. And about $13 billion of aid was pledged to help Haiti rebuild. About $6 billion came in through that. And their own reports show that about 1% of that money got to the Haitian government. 1%. And this was like no bid contracts that Bill Clinton gave to cronies. And anyway, the emails are there. Thank you, WikiLeaks, for all of that. How people got, someone's coming through and they had this thing called, this is a friend of Bill, and so they're not to be treated like anybody else. And in addition to the money that they stole from this CIRH, USAID, that's the arm of the US government that was supposedly helping. It's controlled by the Secretary of State of the United States of America. Who was that at the time? That was Hillary Clinton. Barack Obama created something called the Clinton-Bush fund, you know, where he told American people in the United States, if you want to give money to help Haiti, give it to this project that's created by the US government, but that's headed by Bill Clinton and George Bush.
There you go.
You know, and the Clinton Foundation, there are records of monies coming from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia, you know, giving money to the Clinton Foundation to help Haiti in the middle of this thing where there are other bodies already in existence to do that. There is a Haitian government in existence, you know? And so 4 different entities that they use to pilfer money from the victims of the earthquake. And you go to Haiti today, 2021, you know, you'll still find people who were uprooted from their lives, people who lost families. Just about every Haitian family lost someone, you know, in this tragedy. And these people, they never got any kind of support, any money to help rebuild a house, to any kind of repair. And yet billions of dollars that were stolen. There was a program that was done in television over here with the Red Cross. They raised $500,000, and the program said they built 6 houses for this $500 million. You know, so not 500,000. I'm sorry, $500 million that they raised. So this was a gold rush, and what they say is, and this Collier plan that I spoke about before, that they had very great difficulty to implement. They used the earthquake as the opportunity, like the shock doctrine. I think that's Naomi Klein.
Yes.
What you can't do in regular times, you know, let a scandal, let a 9/11 happen, you know, and you'll get this anti-terrorism bill, you know, passed without anyone reading it. Mm-hmm. So it's something like this that happened after the earthquake in Haiti. And this is how they were able, the Clintons, you know, the US government, they were able to uproot hundreds of peasants from an area, one of the most productive areas in the country, in the north of the country, called Caracol, to build this factory complex, you know, that they spent supposedly, of course, you know, they're stealing as well, millions of dollars to create. They said there's going to be tens of thousands of jobs. And of course, it never happens. It never happens. And right now, they're even talking about getting rid of it altogether. I spoke on the radio program this week about this project, this report from Afghanistan, like how much money the US spent, like in projects that never came to fruition, you know? Like they spent like millions of dollars building a house that nobody ends up living in. Yes. So this is what they do to create they do it to steal money, but at the same time to look like they're doing something good, something that will help you, but at the end of the day, nothing of the such happens to it.
Mm-hmm. So talking about help, people would like to know what the American people can do to stop the US oppressing Haiti. And also,
I'm laughing because, of course.
Is there, if you think there is another choice apart from Aristide, anyone who could run for president in Haiti? Someone else apart from Aristide. So 2 questions in one. what can we do here in the States to support Haiti and stop the United States oppressing Haiti? And is there anyone else who'd be willing to be a candidate for the president?
They don't want, the person asking the question doesn't want Aristide.
Well,
but yeah,
it's always good to have plurality.
I'm joking, but let me say, when folks ask what can people in the United States do, my question, I joke with that, but I say, do you feel free here? Do you feel that you can help yourself here? Because if you are living here and you're not, if let's say you're a Black person and you're not able to stop the United States from killing your son, or your daughter, then you're not in a position to do much to help the people in Haiti. If you're living here and you're a poor person, someone struggling, working at a McDonald's or whatever, and you cannot force the U.S. government to have a $15 an hour minimum wage, you can't really help the people in Haiti, But what we say is for people to be informed, to inform your neighbors. There's something that Malcolm X had said to like white people who wanted to join his movement to uplift Black people. And he was like, yeah, organize yourselves, organize your neighbors. And then if you do what needs to be done in your community, then a lot of the problems that Black people have here, they will not exist. And there's a tendency for people at the center of empire thinking that they have the power to help people in the periphery, but they don't. They don't, because they are suffering as well where they are, and they don't have much power. Like, I'm sure, I'm saying I'm sure, but I don't know. But I think a lot of the people who would have a tendency to come to a meeting like this, might have been people who supported someone like Bernie Sanders, in the 2 last elections. But nothing came of that, and many people feel that Bernie Sanders was cheated, not just the first time, but the second time as well, through fraudulent means, tricks that the people with power do to get the results that they want. So what I want to say, yeah, it's important to know about Haiti. It's important to, you have spoke about Black Jacobins. There's another book I would really recommend. It's called Silencing the Past, Power and the Production of History. This is Michel Wolf Trujillo, Trouyillot, is Silencing the Past. And it speaks about the history of Haiti and how the people with the power to do that conspire to silence the Haitian Revolution. Because everyone knows about the French Revolution, right? Everyone knows about the American Revolution, but the one revolution that for many of us was a real revolution, the real revolution, they silence it. Because after the French Revolution, France was still enslaving people, right? And after the American Revolution that said all men are created equal, right? They were the slavery here. So look at what happened through the Haitian Revolution, and then you can understand like what the word revolution means. So definitely check out that book, Silencing the Past. But people have to understand, like, if you're not able to deal with what's happening in your neighborhoods, you're not able to deal with your district, you have someone that does not represent you there. You see, living in a neighborhood where gentrification is happening. You're being pushed out. The food that's coming to your community is not of good quality. You know, you're subsidizing stadiums. You know, you're subsidizing a police force that is killing Black people. Then you really have some work to do before you get to Haiti. That's not pleasant to hear, because people want to feel that, you know, they have some power, they have some control, and that they can change what's going on in Africa or whatever, you know. But while we forget, you know, it's the coltan in the Congo, you know, through the slavery, through the massacres of people that makes it to our iPhones and to our laptops, you know. And the coup in Bolivia happened because of lithium for electric cars. Everyone wants a Tesla, right? But the world is connected. And if the government over here truly represented the people, then Haiti would not have the problems that it has. Because then it would be like, is it the people in the United States who want mass murders, massacres in poor neighborhoods in Haiti? Is it like the people of the United States who really want these kids that Biden, Trump is not here anymore, Biden still has in cages right now as we are speaking? So I think people at the center who are living in the center really need to do some introspection, you know, some what the left folks call some autocriticism, you know, to look at how much of this, like, you know, am I an investor in ExxonMobil, you know, like, are my pension funds tied up to this institution or that institution that is producing weapons, that is responsible for this, that, and the other? So I think, yeah, we would like to see people on one day holding signs saying they support Haiti, down with Jovenel Moïse, but we want people to look at how their daily lives support the injustices that I'll say we are protesting against, because I'm here speaking about Haiti, but I'm living here in the United States as well. So this is what I would like people to look at, what I would like people at the center to think about and to act on.
Well, thank you so much. I think we have to wrap up with that. This was a wonderful conversation, and we thank you all the people who came out to support and to listen to what Daou André had to share with us. It was very instructive and I think inspiring too. We have to take care of ourselves while taking care of someone else. The takeaway is well, we all have to vote, and our vote has to count for something, you know, represent our interests. And that interest has to be from a human perspective, against colonialism, against imperialism, because we need to be free, not only Haiti. Let's start by freeing ourselves here inside our country in order to help someone else's, because that's the only way that we as a wave, we have these ripple effects. Thank you so much, everyone. Venceremos, solidarity, so the freedom for everybody, freedom for Haiti, and let's support the cause that's a human cause against racism, against imperialism, colonialism, xenophobia, and all kinds of discrimination. Thank you so much, and everyone have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daoud. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you. Nice.